And we're live. How's everyone doing tonight? Sorry for the delay. As you can see, we're in a new and beautiful studio. Took a few extra minutes to figure out how to set it up. But this is a sign of an upgrade of sorts, taking our operation to the next level. For those who have been with us from the beginning, I know this is probably an exciting moment for all of us. These studios are called NoFilter Studios. They're run by Israeli comedian Tzvika Adar. He's trying to create an Israeli-like Netflix, and he's closing deal with all sorts of content creators. So not only do we get to use his studio, but he will also help us distribute Sulha content to his platform. So very much an exciting time. Before we get started, quick formalities. Quick shout out to our Patreon visionary members. We have Trivium Energy Pty Ltd, SOG Cannabis, Max Marine, Geffen Posner, Adam Becker, Maya, Kimberly, Rajia, Nate Hinman, Julian Melser, and our one and only legendary member, Speedy Weedy. If you want to support the show, you can find our Patreon and other ways to support us in the description. All and any support is greatly appreciated. Today we have a roundtable discussion. We're going to touch on all sorts of topics related to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I'm very excited to present our guests. We already actually got a super chat from Jordan. Thank you, Jordan, for the $20. I very much appreciate it. And let's get started. Navizam, Nirofe, Yanifa, Eunice. And we do have two more Palestinians joining who are also running a little bit late, / having technical difficulties. But we didn't want you all to need to wait more, so we said we're going to get the show on the road. As soon as they come in, we're going to bring them in here for the discussion. So we're going to start with a quick round of introductions, and then we're going to get started with our chat. So we could start whoever wants to go. Take it away.
Okay, my name is Nir. I'm 33 years old, Israeli, living in Hadera. I have a 3-year-old daughter named Michal and a 31-year-old wife named Shira. And I come from the organization called Sipur Hikaya, which is an NGO that believes that we need to use the dual narrative model to connect between Israelis and Palestinians, which means teaching Israeli youth the Palestinian narrative and vice versa.
Thank you, Nir.
My name is Yunus. I am a Palestinian. I am a translator and a geopolitical commentator and a dialogue facilitator. I'm happy to be in this conversation.
Thank you, Eunice. Danny.
Yes. Okay. I was just waiting for everyone. My name is Danny, longtime member, 28 years old, living in the outskirts of Jerusalem, Israeli, life coach, English teacher, but I really think it's important for Israelis and Palestinians to bridge the gap between them, and that is why I do things like this and also work in other NGOs, hopefully in hopes to bridge the gap between the two narratives and find a solution.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I won't say much about myself, so sorry. But I am Israeli, a Kurd that immigrated to Israel, Kurdish Jew.
Great to have you here, Navi, for the first time. And Malcolm, what's up?
Hey, how are you doing?
You want to give a quick intro?
About me, you mean?
Yeah, just who you are, where you are, what you're about. 10, 15 seconds.
Sure.
Hello?
Hey, Mohanad, we're live already. Thanks for joining us. Malcolm's going to introduce himself, and then we're going to give you the floor.
I'm so sorry.
All good.
Okay. Mohanad, ahlan wa sahlan.
Assalamu alaikum.
So my name is Malkon. I'm from the old city of Jerusalem. I'm a Palestinian Armenian. I have a BA in psychology and a master's in human rights and international law. And I've been an activist in peace building and human rights.
Great to have you here, Malkon. Muhannad, welcome and joining us for the first time. How are you?
Oh, I'm crazy. So it's just when you told me, I know you told me previous it was going to be like 8 something p.m., right?
Yeah, 8 p.m. JLM.
Yeah. Oh my God, where I'm from, it's like in the morning. So I got so confused because I forgot you live half across, the
time zone
ocean.
issues. It happens.
Yeah, well, stuff happened. Okay, let me just introduce myself. Hi, my name is Mohammed Yusuf. I live in the United States. I'm a Palestinian American, and I share my views on the recent conflict that goes on in the Middle East. And yeah, that's it. Any more?
Great to have you here. So, Muhannad, I'm going to ask you to put a profile pic up just so we have a nice little visual effect.
Really?
Or either turn on your camera or like find a profile pic. Because the standard display is not appealing enough,
Well, my face isn't really that appealing enough. I'm
sure
not very photogenic,
So just find a nice profile pic.
How do you do that? Oh, this is my first time.
Yeah, I think you click the 3 dots.
Oh, I see. Edit.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You're right.
3 dots. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So what can I add for an avatar? Find an avatar.
Great. In the meantime, so the way we're going to do this today is we're going to go around and everybody's going to present the topic that they want to talk about. They're going to start by saying something about that topic, and then all our guests are going to chime in. We'll be on each topic for 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll go to the next person. They'll present the topic. So we're going to start with Navi. All you.
So what I'm going to talk about is the connection between the Jewish identity crisis and the Jewish religious crisis and the conflict. These both crises, they are the thing that keep the conflict going for the Israelis. So I think it's important to talk about it.
So you want to say a few more words on it so we know exactly what you mean by that, and then people can chime in?
What I mean is that the Jewish identity crisis, because there are a lot of things in Judaism that we haven't agreed on as a people, so we cannot solve the problem, because there are things that are less valuable to some people, and some things are more valuable to some people. So they can't agree on anything, and that's why we have those who support the two-state solution, and those who support the binational state, and those who support the federal solution, and more.
So you think there needs to be a lot more work within Israeli society understanding what we actually want before we have any chance of solving the conflict?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I like this topic, and I will say it's relevant to Palestinians because Palestinians perhaps may feel the same way. We'll hear from our panelists. The Jews can comment on if they feel that there's a need to unify around some kind of solution, and Palestinians can respond to the same question, but about their society. So whoever wants to take the floor, all you.
So when you talk about the Jewish crisis, you talk only in the sense of the fact that the Jewish population isn't united into one solution? Or is it the way that we grasp what Judaism is and what it entails and what a Jewish state is to look like, if at all?
Yeah, so I will give you an example. Maybe that will clarify what I'm saying. For example, I am a religious Jew. So the religion is the most important thing for me. So even if we have to give up on some land in order to keep the religion as it is right now, so I will choose this solution and I will give up some land but keep the religion as it is.
So
But
you
some
believe a
people,
two-state solution would keep your Jewish identity?
yeah, I think the two-state solution will help the Jewish religion.
So a
How
Jew cannot be a
exactly?
Jew outside of Israel religiously?
A Jew can be a Jew outside of Israel, but this conflict is something, because in our religion we talk a lot about the land, and the land is very important. So it's important for every one of us, even those who don't live here, who live outside of Israel, to come together and find a united Jewish and religious Jewish religious identity and a united identity, so we can move forward towards a solution. And we can say, maybe, for example, the land is less important, we can give up on some, so two-state solution is a good solution, we can go in this path. Or maybe some people would say, no, the land is the most important thing, and we need to go for one state. But at least we choose one identity, and according to that, we choose one solution.
But Israelis aren't monolithic.
Sorry, I don't know what monolithic means.
Monolithic means that we're not one group of the same. And so when you talked about like a Jewish crisis, for me, it was kind of like, what do we define Judaism to be? Because you are giving me an understanding that for you, Judaism is solely a religion, and that as a state, we should have a state where religiously Jews can be free. There are people who sees Judaism not necessarily or solely as a religion, but as an ethnicity or as a culture. There are many different ways to define and see Judaism as what it is, or the way we define it as a state, right? We call ourselves the Jewish people because Judaism cannot be defined into any one box. It is not solely a religion, it is not solely ethnicity, it's not solely a culture, it is a people that have stayed different no matter how many years they've been in the diaspora, and they've remained Jewish.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
The question that needs to be asked when you're talking about Jewish identity, that how much does Jewish identity needs to be connected to the land where Jews are living? Which is an open question that I'm not sure that we'll ever have answers to. Some Jews think that the land is, like you said yourself, some Jews may think the land is important, some will not. Me personally, I think that Jewish values, when you talk about Jewish identities, Jewish values are much more important than Jewish control. I can say the value of human life is very much mentioned in Judaism, and respect the elderly, and many things that I think that the conflict itself kind of made a lot of people forget about those Jewish values, and it's important to put them on the table again.
Just to ask a question, Adar, were you saying that speaking about these things should be the Jewish stuff should be spoken about by Jewish people and Palestinian stuff by Palestinians? I didn't understand.
No, we'd love to hear your idea.
No, we'd very much love to hear your thoughts.
So
You.
Navi very much believes that Jews and primarily Israelis need to do more to unify around a solution, to know what they want if we have any hope to solving the conflict. And I think this is something relevant to Palestinians, because I have heard from Palestinian friends say that Palestinians don't quite know exactly what they want when it comes to solutions, what the land is meant to look like from the river to the sea. So I view this as relevant actually to both people. How do you feel about that, Malcolm?
Sure. No, I wanted to allow myself to tease you. Tease a Jewish identity. I'm just kidding. Of course, it's a sensitive topic: identity, human identity, ethnic identity, or spiritual. And I'll just maybe mention something. Now, speaking as a Palestinian about Jewish identities, particularly maybe as a Palestinian Christian. But I hope it will not come across provocative. So basically, the whole Jewish notion to us Palestinians, as we perceive Israel as an oppressor, any oppressor, by the way, in life, whether it's just any person in life or whether it's a regime, or they usually have definitely a deeper identity crisis than the oppressed. Usually, not always, but usually. That's why they need to abuse another person in order to gain value or gain any any humanity to themselves. I need to remove the Palestinian in order to feel like Israel belongs to me. And I'm not saying this is every Israeli, I'm just saying the history or current reality of the occupation. So I need to remove the other's name from the map, removing Palestine, removing this, removing that. So definitely, there's definitely a very deep crisis. On the other hand, to give my opinion, which can be very long because I studied the Bible and biblical history and stuff. Jewish identity was always connected with two major elements. But this is my personal understanding as a believer Christian of the Old Testament, or the Tanakh as we call it. It was connected vertically to God, believer in God, and a community which based on this faith in God. Without faith in God, there is no Judaism, there's no Jewishness in history. This is how the Bible defines a Jew. Now, this goes into a lot of conflict with many Jews who barely believe there's even God existing, or many Jews who say I'm atheist, etc. So the word Jewish, of course, like any identity, is organic. It changed, developed, evolved, etc. But the biblical Judaism is not what's Judaism of today. And this is challenging to some. Maybe it's not to others. At the end of the day, people are free to call themselves whatever they want. I am GHM, but as long as for me, they respect others, so that they respect others' rights. The problem for me and I will end with this, with the Jewish identity, is that it brings all of this history and heritage and Bible and land and belongingness and so many things, justifies the crimes against others. It doesn't matter if people believe whatever they want to believe, whether it's right or not, that's not my business. If somebody wants to believe he's a Superman, I'm not implying that this is how Jewish people believe. I'm just saying, even an extremity of somebody, they want to believe they're Superman, but as long as they don't hurt others, hallelujah. It's amazing. But the problem with Jewish identity is the core of the lack of conscience of how it's practiced from the main current regime and the main current occupation system, and the colonization story and history of 1948, and the whole system of how it started of excluding others and dismissing Palestinians from existence until today. Our Nakba continues. We are being dismissed our houses are being demolished or being kicked out. The whole notion of crisis, as Brother Navi is mentioning, is manifesting in such, it's a crime against humanity, or particularly crime against Palestinianism or Palestinians. And so this is the problem for me with the Jewish identity. But I think it's a beautiful request of any Jew to say, hey, let's reform our identity. Like there's other people today, like Adar Cohen and others who say we have an identity crisis, we're colonized, we need to decolonize, etc. I just do wish that some also Jewish people would say we need to de-Zionize, because they see colonization as if separate from Zionism, and Zionism was a settler colonial movement. And this mix of this is my land, but I need to decolonize, for me is not honest. Is not that people are not trying not to be honest. It's not honest, as it's not fitting. And for me, and redefining a concept like Zionism that keeps overflowing is shallow. And this is another problem. But anyway, this is my opinion on identity. We have a lot to say on the Palestinian side, but I just wanted to comment because it's about the Jewish identity. Thank you for listening to me.
Can I ask you a question? Do you feel that redefining Zionism is shallow because it takes away from the Palestinian narrative and experience?
Depends what you mean by redefining. If you're redefining as a denial of what's happened in it, if you're saying it's not a colonial settler movement today, and it was never there, well, that's for me.
If today I came and defined Zionism as a human being who believes in living in the land of Zion, and freeing it from outside forces and having the people in the land of Zion free. If I were to come to you and say, this is my definition of Zionism, would it be a shallow attempt in your eyes or in the eyes of Palestinians that you know as an attempt to eradicate what Zionism is for them? Or what it has been for them up until now?
It's irrelevant, Danny. It's irrelevant. What is it for us? I'm saying what has been in history and today. Zionism in history and today, at least partially, in history was the exclusion, not mainly. Part of it, the crime around it, is the exclusion of us. Did it change today? No. Did it decrease in some people's minds? Maybe yes. But is it still going on? Of course. That's the system. We are subdued, excluded, dismissed, being discriminated against, mistreated, killed, abused, massacred, and the list goes on. So if this stops, you define it as a flowery, beautiful, whatever you want, that's beautiful and that's to you, and I totally appreciate it. As long as it doesn't stop and people call themselves Zionists, with that, then we're speaking about that type of Zionism. To tell me, but for me, Zionism means this. Oh, well, I believe you. I believe that it's for you. But we're speaking about history and current reality of the controller, of the abuser, not a personal take on, I can redefine today, I call it reformation. For example, in the history of Christianity, we reformed a lot of heathen, pagan related stuff, like Virgin Mary and the Son. It was about gods. It was taking God. But for us, we reformed it into Virgin Mary and Jesus instead of destroying it. So this was because there was times of history we couldn't just destroy everything to do with paganism, and pagans were accepting Christianity. This is wisdom, but it's not denial. We didn't say, well, there was never God. This Virgin Mary statue has always been Virgin Mary, and the child has always been Jesus. Well, that's denial and lies, and becomes then immoral and unethical. This is what I'm talking about. I wish I explained myself better.
It's just when you say that Zionism comes at the exclusion of Palestinians, and I'm not saying that I disagree. That is not my point. my question is that prior to the establishment of the state of Israel, there was a massive influx of Jews coming into Israel even before World War II. I'm talking about under the Ottoman Empire in the later half of the 1800s. And I studied in my BA and my MA, Middle Eastern Political Sciences. And with the research that I've done, I saw that there was a hysteria on the side of the Palestinians, making them feel like the massive influx of Jews into the land of Israel Palestine was a sincere threat, which ended up being true, right? I mean, they didn't feel threatened because at the end of the day, there was the establishment of the Israeli state, and it came at the expense of Palestinians. So it's not that their fear wasn't justified, but even prior to the establishment of the state, there was this hysteria regarding massive Jewish migration into the land. So how do you propose that when both of us were at the other side of the spectrum and both of us felt that our identity is endangered by the other, how do we break the cycle if it can be broken, if given if the choice is given of a one-state solution? I'm sorry, I'm really tired, so I hope my question made sense. Because Nabi talks about a two-state solution because he understands that the Jewish identity comes at the expense of the Palestinian identity and narrative and livelihood, and that the Palestinian identity comes at the expense of Jewish livelihood and identity. And so I don't know what solution you opt for, or if you have any solution that you prefer. But Nabi's support for two-state solution, in essence, strengthens exactly what you say. But if we were to go to any other solution other than a two-state solution, how could we break that cycle?
So I don't want to be, of course.
Yeah, I do want to get other people.
And,
I do want to get more people in on this discussion.
yeah.
But Danny and Malcolm, if you guys would like to do a one-on-one session at some point, either 20 questions or a discussion moderated by myself, let me know and we'll set it up. I actually think that could be a very good one.
Sure, if you pay us, Adar, of course. Pay us with a hug and a kiss. You look so excited by saying it. That's why I have to tease you. You're so cute.
Now with the new studio and all, maybe.
Yeah, with the new studio, I'm going to start live streaming a lot more. I'm going to be here all day. Get ready for some awesome content.
If you have a new studio.
Does anybody want to chime in on this topic, or does somebody want to present a new topic?
I can chime in a little bit. Look, the problem that I have with this kind of debates is that we are starting to talk a lot about history and the right of Jews to live here, the right of Palestinians to live here, etc., and we are not focusing on the future, which is to me the most important. We need to think about how the next generation will live here, will live a better life from both sides. That's basically. And now I'm going to chime in to the topic that I present, which is the dual narrative model. I'm part of an organization that is called Sipur Hikaya. Sipur is story in Hebrew, Hikaya, story in Arabic. Two stories that to create truth need to connect. Our idea is basically to teach the Palestinian narrative to young people living in Israel, and later to do vice versa, to teach Palestinian children and youth the Israeli narrative, in order to create, better grassroots for to create peace later. People call us peace later, not peace now. We're thinking way ahead. So I know it's kind of weird to say, look, it doesn't matter what happened in the past, because it does matter. The past redefines our present and future, but it's not the thing that we need to focus on when we engage. We have an opportunity of Palestinian and Israelis to engage. So instead of focusing of who did what, let's focus on what we can do together. That's what I think about.
I'll just jump in quickly because I wanted to understand Danny's question. But before that, Danny, very quickly, Nir, very quickly. The problem with the argument that you present is that we are not equal. Equal, what I mean by equal, we are not in equal responsibility. Okay? Nor are we in equal, maybe you agree already. This narrative of me bringing my story, you bringing your story, and to understand each other more, it's beautiful. It has its place. I'm a geopolitical tour guide. I did dual narrative tours. The Israeli tour guide, I'm a Palestinian, and we share each other's narratives. That's not because I want to build a generation who understand both stories and thus create a more understanding. Not only for that, mainly because an oppressor is not equal to an oppressed. And that's a human rights approach centered, and that brings relief, and that brings justice. If you're going to tell me that a Nazi was equal to a Jew, let's bring both narratives of the Nazis and the Jews together and see why the Nazi was abusing the Jew and the Jew was being abused. And say, oh, but let's hear the Nazi. Maybe we can understand them more, etc., etc.
But Malcolm, I would push back real quick and say a German and a Jew are equal. If we're talking about individuals and their stories, then we can put them on equal footing.
In dignity, always. We're not speaking about dignity, we speak about responsibility, which is what we believe is, unfortunately, an Israeli propaganda towards lowering and minimizing the occupation and minimizing the conflict. It's a very, very different responsibility on an Israeli. I don't know if you live in Israel, Mia.
I do.
Sure. To speak like this, usually that's how Israelis speak. With all due respect to you, to us, it's dismissing our suffering of the past, and it actually dismisses the present. You're telling me about the future. I would ask you and beg you to beg your government to stop abusing us today. Not in the past. I will forget about the past. Stop demolishing our houses today. Stop abusing our freedom today. Stop intervening in who we love, who we fall in love with, who we're allowed to get married or not married to, if you don't know about this today. Stop abusing all of those rights today. And then tell me about the future. The future is determined by human rights, by accessing those rights. Your responsibility as an Israeli. If I were an Israeli with a conscience, and I believe you are, with an awakened conscience, I would simply, what the main thing I would do, resist my government, resist everything they do against the Palestinians, and be very, very sorry for the Palestinians and confessing and admitting how responsible I am, rather than telling them that we're equal, etc., etc. That's how somebody who represents the oppressive, stronger, more powerful regime should react. I'm not saying that Palestinians will never do something wrong and the Israelis are never innocent. Actually, Israelis sometimes are the oppressed and Palestinians sometimes are the oppressor, but that's not the mainstream, that's the exception. And we should, as Palestinians, take responsibility for that as well. So when we talk about that, just last thing to say, we're speaking about not two narratives and stories coming together, loving each other. So of course, this is amazing.
I think you missed my point.
Or maybe I missed your point. You can correct me. However, saying that I'm focusing on the past is not very also bringing reality or bringing solution. Anybody, I'm also a psychologist, anybody who comes to me for counseling, couple, and they want to move on, they need to tell me what's the problem of the past, the root of the issue. We deal with the root and then to move on. We can't just dismiss the past and history and death and bloodshed and say, just let's move on. Doesn't work like that.
Not
Humanly
dismissing the past.
and emotionally doesn't. Sure. I'm just saying, dismissing what I said, focusing on the past. I hear it all the time from Israel. Oh, we can't speak about the past. Well, I can even stop speaking
But it's
about the
not
past.
just not
I can
speaking
speak
about the
about.
past. For him, when he says, I'm so sorry that I'm speaking for you,
Go
Neil.
ahead.
That when he says we need to look into the future, and when you say that if I were an Israeli, I would reject my government and I would reject the way that my government treats the Palestinian, this is Nir's way to doing both. When the fact that he is working towards instilling in the Israeli education the Palestinian narrative of their past and what Zionism did to the Palestinian people, first of all, I think is a huge step forward. Unfortunately, this is not the step that Palestinians want and need. We need to work faster for the Palestinians. I get that. Palestinians are in dire situation. No one is saying that they aren't. Unfortunately, nor Nir, no I, or any one single Jewish person has the power to overthrow the government and change everything in a day. So what we can do is educate the future generations to understand that Palestinians are not the enemy. Palestinians are people of this land. Palestinians have suffered at the hands of Israel and has continually suffered up until now. And so once you instill in the minds of children that Palestinians are just as equal to us and have just the same rights as us, and that they've been oppressed by us because we have been threatened or jealous of our narrative or identity or whatever, I think that what he's doing is exactly what you're opting for. It just takes much more time. And unfortunately,
I'm gonna chime in later.
Hmm?
I'm gonna chime in. I'm gonna chime in after you finish.
Real quick though, because Eunice, I know you need to run soon, and I want to give you the opportunity to share before you got to go.
Yeah, thanks, Adar. Yeah, I had something in mind to comment on, but then the point was missed. I mean, I don't know what to. It's too many things all of a sudden, but I'll try to make up my mind. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, say whatever you want.
And Nir, carry on. I'll talk afterwards.
Cool.
Do you mind if I'm sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, but do you mind if I kind of chime in really quick?
Sure.
Sure, no problem.
So I want to actually backpedal on what Malcolm just said. Malcolm, I'm sorry. He was talking about earlier about the settlements. And anytime I bring up the issue of the settlements when I'm discussing like the issues that are like facing the Palestinian people today, Palestinian people, it's usually phrased so differently on the other side. They don't see it as like, they usually don't frame it as the settlements. Like if I talk about the illegal settlements, they're going to refer back to what's wrong with Jews living in Judea. And that kind of wraps into what we're talking about, the education. When we talk about education, what education are we referring to? What is the education that we're going to be receiving from the Israeli side? Like when we were talking about the settlements, that plays a lot into it, because when you phrase it as Jews living in Judea, that's not the problem. There's no problem with Jews living in the West Bank. I have asked distant relatives about that, and they're perfectly fine with that. The approach of how to go about that is where the issue lies. And when you just phrase it, for example, Gaza, for example, when we talk about Gaza, like Hamas's uprising and stuff like that, and like the bombs that we see going into Gaza, it's never really framed as like resistance, or it's never really framed as like a bomb flew into a building in Gaza. It's usually framed as what's wrong with Israel's right to defend itself. So I think the issue at hand is deceptive perspectivism, kind of. It's how you perceive it. Because when you're talking about the Palestinian cause, you're talking, what are we exactly talking about? And what I feel like we're talking about is how do, Oh, okay. How do Palestinians, how do they defend themselves? What can they say without the other response is you're trying to demonize Israel. You're trying to basically get Israel, wipe Israel off the map. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Oh, you're just saying that because you want Jews to be thrown into the river, and it's like, whoa, 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 that escalated really fast. I didn't say that. That's when you frame it like that, it's gonna sound terrifying. And I often think about it like the Black Panthers, for example, when they say they can't stand white people, they have an issue with white people. They hate those people. If you're a white person and you hear that, of course you're going to be resilient. You're going to be like, this is unacceptable. This is too extreme. No, sorry, I just lost track of something. When we talk about to the Black Panthers, they're not actually, for the most part, of course, there's some that are calling for the deaths of all white people living in America, but for the most part, when they're referring to basically when they're saying like white people need to pay for all this stuff or everything like that, they're basically calling for the justice of what happened to them previously, historically, And once again, I'm not going to be biased. Of course, there's going to be like Jews also who face persecution for thousands of years, and they feel like, hey, if I was to say that about the non-Jews and I say non-Jews have to pay, I would be like, okay, there's something wrong with that slogan. But if you think of it, non-Jews for the most part, if you take a look at the Jewish state of Israel, the national homeland, I would say that happily it's already been done. Jews for the most part, they have birthrights. They can go to where they want to. Obviously depending what Jew you are, if you're Beta of Israel, if you're your experience might be a little bit different and everything like that. But I would say generally Jews had what's that word I'm looking for? Replication or something like that. Basically, they were given a lot more than what most African Americans in the United States have been given, and
reparations.
Reparations. Thank you so much, Artie. I'm stuttering like crazy. I apologize. My first time.
No, good. I think you're making good, coherent points, especially if this is your first time. You're doing great.
Oh yeah, because like, when we're phrasing this, when we're talking about the persecuted, if you're talking about, let's say, in the Jewish perspective, Jewish people have always kind of been persecuted for, I think, 2,000 years. So into the Jewish perspective, it's not just modern day Israeli suffrage, right? Like, there was a bombing in the bus or they got stabbed. Okay. They're not just talking about that. They're talking about a 2,000-year-old persecution to a relative persecution that's going on against the Palestinian people. To me, it's kind of an unfair advantage. You're talking about 2,000 years of discrimination, persecution, blood libels, Spanish Inquisition, and the list can go on. But most of that suffering wasn't caused by Hamas. It wasn't caused by Hezbollah. Yes, they are, for the most part, bad. I understand that. But most of that Jews do simply use that Jewish suffrage to amplify the Israeli narrative. To me, is deceptive because, like we both say, we're going to talk about nation states, right? Israel, Palestine, Palestine, where you want to say, all recently came in the 1900s. If you're going to talk about Palestinian suffrage, yeah, it's been going on ever since the Nakba. It's been going on for quite a while, ever since like after the British Mandate, even during Ottoman rule. But we're going to talk about the Israeli perspective, which is, I would say, like as the state Israelis, I would say ever since 1900s, you could say even from then. But like, once again, that suffrage pales in comparisons to Palestinian suffrage, unless You take into accountability the 2,000 years of Jews being persecuted. And that's where I think things get deceptive. I mean, I'm perfectly fine of talking about Jewish and Israeli suffrage. You know what I mean? But if we're gonna be like, Jews have been persecuted from so many countries throughout the world and throughout history, okay, but like I said, it doesn't really stack up to the persecution that goes on to modern day Israelis. What they are facing is way different than the Jews you're talking about and the Russian Empire and so forth. If any of this is making sense, what I'm basically trying to say is that we're talking about an unfair lens of history. The persecution, for the most part, has not been caused by the Palestinian people. It has not been caused mostly by Egypt or by Jordan or anything like that. Sure, there has been, slaves in Egypt. I remember that. But for the most part, a, a lot of what the Israelis are talking about, I understand when they say that we need to have the state of Israel for Jews to be protected and, for the most part like that. Yeah. Once again, it's from who exactly, is my question, because are we talking about, the thousands of countries that Jews have been persecuted in? Then I would say, I mean, it's, you see what I mean? It gets too semantical. It gets too confusing to even keep, counts. I think that the sole issue should be what Israelis, whether they be Druze, whether they be some Circassians, whether they be from different backgrounds, rather than just solely the Jewish perspective. Because I think you guys touched on this earlier, that Israeli doesn't automatically equate to the Jewish identities. Like, I hear it all the time. There are like 20% of Israeli Arabs in Israel. They're having their democracy and stuff like that. Okay, so essentially, Israeli does not equate to Jewish. So when we're talking about Israeli suffering, we're not talking about a 2,000-year-old suffering that Jewish people have been facing for the past 2,000 years. We're talking about from 1900s to all the way up until now. And any objections, like anyone who feels the need to disagree with that, please let me know.
I actually kind of agree with you, but I do want to comment about what Malcolm said earlier, when you basically said that I was dismissive of your past, which is totally not true. It's not what I said. I mean, like I said, we shouldn't we don't need to ignore the past. We need to focus on the future. That doesn't mean ignoring the past. What part of what my movement does is to actually take people to Palestinian territories to see the situation, to understand the situation, and to see the suffering. This is where we agree. We totally agree that the responsibility is on us because we are in power, and I agree with you. The responsibility is in the Israeli side. We totally disagree about the comparison to the Nazis, of course, and I believe you realize that, and you said it as some kind of a triggering word, but never mind, as we say. But this is the way to change the present. The way I see it is to focus on education, on understanding the other side, of letting the other side see what the other side is suffering from, and then we build the ground for a change. I don't know what you said what you would do if you were an Israeli. You are not an Israeli, and I'm not sure that you would do what we would do if you were. That's easy to say, I think. But this is our way to change things. We are working for at least I do, working for a change. and hopefully in due time, the ground will be easier to change.
I mean, when you were talking about the West Bank, once again, it doesn't also just extend to the West Bank. Also, like recently, I'm pretty sure every one of you have a different opinion about this. The recent Sheikh Jarrah incidents that's happening at Silwan and all that other stuff too. That's not in the West Bank. It's around Jerusalem, right? That's considered to be Israeli territory, correct? Okay.
It's,
Yeah.
you could say it's contested.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's a big question mark, I'd say.
Yeah, but of course, if you ask international, United Nations, they'll completely side with mostly what Israel would consider to be theirs. So I'll just go based off of that, right? If they say, "Hey, it's part of Israeli territory," then okay, so I guess I can't argue with that. You know what I mean?
No, Muhammad. East Jerusalem is Palestinian occupied territories according to international law. It's
Oh
not
no,
Israel.
I meant Jerusalem. I meant the outer, like where Sheikh Jarrah.
East
It's in East.
Jerusalem.
Oh, East.
Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah, I live in East Jerusalem. Those are
Oh
East
yeah.
Jerusalem.
And like once again, it's like the reason why me and Malkan, I think, we're both against the settlements is because we haven't had a consensus, consension. Yeah, if I'm saying that right. Yeah. What I'm basically saying is that so far you can't. How do I put this? Let's say we're gonna have a dispute about a house someone's gonna live in, right? Well, you can't just start pulling up furniture. You can't start just pulling up waters and stuff like that. It has to be first an agree upon, like an agreement first. So when we see that there are settlements being planted, and once again, this goes back to what I'm saying, as it being framed as Jews living in Judea, that is once again not the issue. Like even to the analogy of using the house, like, oh, hey, I'm just setting up stuff for my house. Okay, but guess what? We haven't agreed upon what part of the house you get and what part of the house I get. You know what I mean? So the big thing as of right now is to call a halt on it. You know what I mean? Because I believe that the settlements cause more harm than good, because it shows, I would say, at least to Palestinians in the West Bank, it shows recklessness. It shows that, look, they're pulling up settlements and they didn't even have to hear about what we have to say first. You know what I mean?
Yes, but let's talk a little bit about settlements, because generally I agree that there's a lot of harm that a lot of settlers do, but let's talk a little bit more positive. There is a movement called Shorashim Judo. I don't know if you heard about it. That is a movement that was founded by Palestinians and Israeli settlers living in Gush Etzion, the West Bank. This movement is basically building a community to improve the life of all the people that live in there, the Palestinians and the settlers themselves. You do see a huge gap between the life of the Jewish settlers there and Palestinians. You go to the kfarim, to the villages. You see the gap. You see the suffering. And this movement that was built initially by settlers, which contacted the Palestinians and they built it together, is actually doing joint. They are joining forces to create better life for the people around it. So the term settlement, I know it creates a lot of antagonism and bad, but it's not what I'm trying to say is not all settlers are land stealers.
You don't like the
Basically,
negative connotation that comes with the phrase settlements. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say. But basically, I agree that we can treat, like I said before, we as Israelis have the opportunity, because we have the responsibility and power to treat our neighbors, the people that live in this land, with better respect and better we can treat them better. We need to treat them better. And we can't have this cold, when we talk about the peace that will come, I don't know when, but I believe will come. It can't be the kind of peace that we have with Egypt and Jordan, which is a peace between the governments, but the people hate each other.
Oh yeah.
Or at least because the communities, the people are mixed in with each other. We need to have a warm peace, and warm peace needs change from the ground up. That's why that's why I think we should focus on education and on a long-term process. And in due time, I believe that things will change.
Well, I mean, like I said before, it's not really a matter of issue whether these settlements or where you want to call them, like, or like Jews living in Judea, where the phrasing is. The issue lies into, let's see what the people of that land agreed upon first. Do we even want to have more of these people coming in? And like, and like how it really does affect them, because so far from my view, if we're talking about a percentage, I would say 95% in my perspective, it's just like it does more harm, because I'm seeing settlements, I'm seeing houses being demolished, predominantly Palestinians, and like honestly, it's almost like a McCarthyism. Are any of you aware of like McCarthyism? Like, oh, this guy's a communist. This guy's a communist, right? So honestly, the government of Israel can just simply demolish these houses, and we can push them on that, and they'll just say, oh, these were terrorists. I mean, and no one's going to press them on that. I don't see anyone, maybe unless Alexander Cortez, but that's a rare occasion. It's just not going to do anything. But for the most part, people in Congress, they're not going to push Israel on that front. There are a couple of occasions of it, but like they can just simply off any of the Palestinians that live there and just say, we're defending ourselves against terrorists or stuff like that. And once again, to throw around the phrase terrorists like that, especially people who have been living there for, let's not even just talk about who has the genetic right to live there. Let's just talk about for decades and for generations. My father, my great grandfather, 9 graves before, has lived here. I mean, let's just talk about the human front of that. I feel as if it's just too morally wrong. And before any settlements are allowed, preferably, in my opinion, I don't think they should be allowed just yet until there either comes to a 2-state solution where the Palestinian identity in the West Bank and in Gaza, or in the 1968 borders, if Israel ever decides to go back to that, is that the reason why we're so heavily against the settlements is not just because of what I just listed. That's a number one factor, but the second factor also plays into the identity, because for example, I've heard this on the far right of Israelis, and it's not representative of any of you guys. I'm just saying from the far right of Israelis say that if we allow 20 Sudan, who said this? It was I think it was someone of like a far right wing Knesset in Israel during like Bibi's reign. The person was saying, like, if we allow 15 million Sudanese, 20 million Filipinos into Israel, we're not going to have a Jewish identity in Israel. And once again, it's fine. It's perfectly fine to have a strong identity to your country. If you feel as if you were going to accept in all these refugees and these migrants to come to your land, you feel like the identity is going to be replaced, that's fine, right? But you also had to vice versa that. You also had to apply that to the Palestinians, is that when you bring in so many settlements in there and try to establish a Jewish identity in the West Bank, it kind of halts or prevents a Palestinian identity to grow within the West Bank. So how can we even have a two-state solution when half of the people that live in such a land are predominantly Jewish, or like Jewish settlers, or whatever you want to say, and that out trumps the Palestinians that have already lived there.
I
And
do
Can
want to give
I
an
jump in?
opportunity. Yeah, I just want to give an opportunity for Navi and Eunice. Oh, was that you, Navi?
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah, Navi. By all means, jump in.
So I want to say something about what Muhannad and Nir are talking about. So the thing is, Muhannad, that the Israelis that live in the settlements in the West Bank, they are majority people who don't support the two-state solution, and that's we go in a circle. We came back to the original topic I talked about. That is something that is connected to the Jewish identity crisis, because we cannot agree on a solution. Everyone does what is best for his solution. So someone who supports a one-state solution comes to the West Bank and builds a settlement to destroy the two-state solution, but he's lying to the Palestinian, and he's lying to the Israelis. He lives in the West Bank. He destroys the two-state solution, but he tells to the Israelis that live in the 48 lands that it's okay, we can have a Jewish majority. It's okay, we will have it. So if you dive in and you see all the picture, and you understand immediately that there can't be a Jewish majority and having the West Bank. We need to give up on something. So it can't continue to people can't continue to move to the West Bank and build settlements there and tell to the Israelis in the 48 land, oh, don't worry, we will be a majority. We won't have to accept the Palestinians. It will be okay. I think that's the big problem for me with the settlements. If Israeli comes and say, look, I don't care about Israeli majority, I am moving to the West Bank, I want the one-state solution, that's okay, I'm moving there, do whatever you want. I won't care, that's okay. But today, the settlers are lying to the Israelis in the 48 land. So about what you said, the people in the 48 lands and those who move to the settlements don't think the same. Majority of the people in the settlements, they support the one-state solution.
Well, yeah, Navi, I'm sorry, because I was changing my profile, so of course I missed out on that conversation. But what you were saying about how the settlers, they want to have a one-state solution, and to me, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit forward. I'm just going to say, of course they would want a one-state solution, because it plays in, it plays into their benefit. It plays into the benefit of them just being there without, any consequence of them being there, unaccountably, because we're not talking about a Jew that's been there for, I mean, once again, this is my issue. We're referring to Jews when, obviously some of these people highly identify Israeli. That's why I don't mean to, persuade the conversation, but Ardi, is that how you say your name? It's Ardi, the host. Arda? Adar. I'm so sorry. Arda, I think someone a few episodes ago asked you in a live I think someone sent a question like, why not have Israel just be an Israeli state instead of a Jewish state, kind of, right? Remember? Because it's focusing on the Israeli identity more so than the Jewish identity. So I'm not referring to solely as just a Jew living in the West Bank. I'm also referring to this as an Israeli living there as well. So that identity plays in just as much as the Jewish identity. And more so, like, as going back to what I was saying, is that one state solution plays into the benefit of them just staying there. If you're someone that lives, I'm assuming, if you're someone that lives in Tel Aviv, you wouldn't mind to live, have a two-state solution because you're not interested in the West Bank, you know. But for the Solars, they don't see it like that. They're like, okay, well, we want to just solely go to wherever the biblical Judea and Samaria is, or if it stretches on the Jordanian border or the south of Lebanon, you know. And you know, it's funny. I digress. You know, it's funny because I was seeing. I think he was a Jewish rabbi was talking about like how he was asked about like cities in Israel, and he says like, you know, to be honest with you, I don't really care much for Tel Aviv. And the guy asked, why don't you care? Because it's not mentioned in the Torah. It's not mentioned. Haifa is not mentioned in the Torah. I'm interested in Ramallah. I'm interested in Hebron, the birthplace of Moses, or Abraham. I'm interested in those areas. That's where I want to establish an Israeli or Jewish state. So in that sense, you get two of the perspective of like the centrist Israeli who says I just want to be here to reconnect to my cultural heritage, versus to the far extreme of the what do you guys call the far right of the not the Netracotter, is like a different far right of like I'll just say can I just refer to as Judea?
Are we talking about Kahanis, the extreme right?
Oh yeah, those people. Yeah, I'm referring to them. I think the rabbi was one of them. Thank you, Dana. Yeah, he was, you know, like that brings into another layer of the perspective. Okay, so the issue at hand is that we have to go back to the Palestinian narrative. Is that Palestinian people, such as myself, we see ourselves just regular. We see ourselves native to that land, right? And I know that some on the not Harari. What did Danny say? Danny, I'm so sorry. Oh,
Kahanis.
Huh?
Kahanis.
The Kahanis, you know, or even the far Zionist right, for example. You know, I've seen the videos saying, "Oh, Palestine wasn't a thing until the 19th." Whatever, I could go on, right? And once again, like I said before, it's so hard to base an argument when you're trying to base it on genetic right, which I don't think is going to do anything. It doesn't matter. It's I don't think a country should solely be based on someone's genetic heritage, because once again, there's going to be so much semantics into that, and like they say, the devil's in the details. And I think that if we're gonna base it off of the people who actually live there, like my grandmother lives there, you know what I mean? She went from Ahman, Jordan, to go back into Ramallah. I hope she's safe. I don't know how she's doing, but I think she's safe so far. And like, once again, it's just like the fear of someone coming in and abusing the whole like indigeneity type of argument to justify why they should be over there, rather than the person that has already been there for 80 years, you know? So once again, I know I'm using like different perspective and different, you know, like different phrasing of it. But the sole purpose is that I actually would like to ask like a lot of the Israelis here, Nir, Danny, and like I want to ask about the moral issue. Not like the legal issues of what Israel claims, but what the morals are to it, because legal issues are different than moral issues.
The morality to the claim of what? I'm just trying to understand your question.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand my question too. I'm sorry.
Let's get back on track. You know, yeah. We did have we started where everybody has the opportunity to present the topic. So I do want to get back to that, because I feel like we got a little bit lost here. So, Eunice, you wanna say something? You wanna take the opportunity?
For the first time, I am enjoying listening. Nothing in particular because I lost track of what I wanted to comment on, but it's fine. I enjoy listening.
It's just one of those
Let's narrow
days.
down the conversation to what we were talking about.
That's a
So you're just listening today, Eunice, huh?
I wanted to honestly, I forgot what I was going to comment on much earlier, an hour ago.
Well, let me ask you something else. What's on your mind? What have you been thinking about this week? Any current events that you want to talk about?
I'm not really sure. So many, a lot of things are happening all around the world. First of all, I want to say hi, Malcolm. I'm not really sure if you would remember me. Malcolm is an excellent tour guide, by the way, guys. If you're in the old city in Jerusalem, Malcolm would show you all of the history.
Shukran. Thank you.
We know each other from a trip in Jerusalem. So I wanted to comment just one thing. I heard in the conversation something about it's one of my red lines in any conversation and in any writing or research, that I would never try to redefine someone who defines themselves as a certain who gives themselves a certain identity. I would never tell them you are this, or you're that. I would just approve of what they're trying to define themselves as, because I don't want them to do the same to me. I wouldn't want anybody to, if I am trying to say to someone, you're not as Jewish as the Jews that I'm used to, or the Jews that I've seen in a certain book, then I have also to accept them defining my Arabism or my Palestinianism. So that's just one thing that I would never do in general. Something else that I wanted to comment on was that's the thing that I'm trying to remember. If somebody can rewind us a little bit on some of the topics that have been discussed and we're not fully satisfied.
I mean, I'm happy to present a concept. So, Muhannad, you explained that you spoke about Jewish suffering, but you also explained that the history of Jewish suffering is not at the fault of Palestinians, and I agree with you. And I don't think that we should use our suffering to justify any form of harm caused to Palestinians. So we're in agreement there. But I will tell you, I think the importance of understanding Jewish suffering, because it helps us understand the concerns, fears, and aspirations of the Jewish people. So Jews are not comfortable being a minority. Some are, but there's this idea that when we are a minority, we are not in control of our destiny. We cannot protect ourselves. And the history of being a Jew as a minority proves this time and time again. So it's true that our suffering in no way, shape, or form should justify causing any harm to Palestinians. But if we want to understand why it's very important for Jews to have a Jewish state that has a Jewish majority, which most perceive as just a form of racism, but Jews see it as essential to our security and survival. So it's important to understand how our history of suffering and oppression plays into our concerns and aspirations today. So I'm happy you brought that up, and I think that this concept is very important to understand. And I think in general, both Israelis and Palestinians, we have a fair amount of similarities, but we're also fairly different. And it makes sense that regardless of what solution we have, it seems like we should not be competing over control over one government. It seems like both people deserve the right to self-determine as they wish in a way that's not causing the other side harm, and in a side where they're not in competition for how and what that self-determination looks like. So this is a topic I'm very happy to talk about, because I think often, and I know I imagine Navi will very much agree with this as someone who supports two states. I think the reason he brought up that topic, he says two states is important for the survival of Judaism because he sees one state as the death of the Jewish state. But I do think
actually
that
not quietly.
The trend is going towards one state. There's still, I would say, the majority of Israelis support two states. That's not true about the majority of Palestinians. The international community certainly, by and large, supports two states, but the trajectory seems to be moving towards some kind of a one-state solution. So I'm happy to open up this topic for discussion. I consider myself solution agnostic. There's many solutions I could get behind, but I think the single worst solution is one where we have one single government with two very different people who have different aspirations or competing over control of that government. So I think a two-state solves this problem. I think a confederation solves this problem, and I think a federation can solve this problem. I'm happy to hear what the panelists think.
Adar, one thing that I want to say, sorry, Muannat, I don't support the two-state solution because of what a lot of Israelis feel, that they need a majority to survive or to avoid persecution. I don't. That's not the reason why I came here or why I want a two-state solution. I was in Iran and we were discriminated, but I don't think that's what pushed us to come here. For me, it was the restoration of what we had before the Romans exiled us. I would take discrimination. It won't be pleasant, but I will be okay with it. But the Jewish religion is the thing that is the most important thing for me. And that's why I support the two-state solution, because I think all the other solutions hurt the Jewish religion. So I wanted to clarify that.
Also,
Thank you, Navi.
I just have a question for Navi. Navi, much earlier you said you said that the settlers are pro one-state solution. I don't think that's true. But what's the arrangement of that one-state solution that you say that settlers in the West Bank support?
They support one-state solution, but I didn't say which one-state solution. It could be some want a one-state apartheid solution. Some want a fair one-state solution. It's different from each people, for each person that lives in the settlement. But the common thing for them is they support the one-state solution. Which kind of one-state solution? That's something that each person has a different view.
Right. Do you consider yourself a settler?
No, I don't live in the West Bank.
Would that be possible for you to be, or would you have preservations towards living in the West Bank as a settler?
I can move to the West Bank and live as a settler, and it will be, even here in Israel, we have a housing crisis. the houses here are very expensive. So it would be easy for me to move to the West Bank. It will cost less, but it's completely against my ideology that we need the two-state solution. So I will pay the extra money and stay in the 48th lands and not move to the West Bank.
You
So
touched
because
upon
you're
an interesting
against,
point. There are people who live in the West Bank, not even for any ideological reasons, more than the fact that it's just more affordable.
Also, Adar, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but like I actually want to add on to what you were saying when I brought up Jewish suffrage. I actually was also trying to make a distinction between modern day Israeli suffrage and the suffrage that Jews have been facing for 2,000 years. If like you understand where I'm coming from with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's a quite clear distinction. We are now the powerful ones. I don't consider myself as an Israeli oppressed in any way, shape, or form. It's true, we still need to deal with occasional wars and terror attacks. I personally have lost 5 friends to this conflict, right? So obviously that takes a toll. But I'm not an oppressed person. Jews living in Israel are not oppressed. So our suffering is, whatever suffering we have today is very different than what it once was, but our past definitely still reflects how we feel about being a minority and what our aspirations are. So we cannot separate our past oppression from how we feel today as people. It's very much a part of our collective narrative.
And also, would you I can ask the panel to any of the Israelis here too as well. Like, would you guys consider the Israeli identity to be a Eurocentric one or more so a ethnic one? Like in the United States, for example.
Allow me to comment, Muhammad. Before I go, I have to go.
Okay.
And I wanted to comment long time ago on what Nir responded, and so many things happened. So thank you guys for sharing all of this. I want to say, Nir, for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying. You're saying I misunderstood you. Well, for me, you're centered around what's happening solution-wise, like movement or shorashim, and that's beautiful. And there's a time for everything. We're speaking about the conflict. That's not, unfortunately, the mainstream, the overwhelming reality that there's a solution happening. It's rather the exception and the rarity, the scarcity. But it's beautiful to mention it. But for me, how it comes across when an Israeli first focuses on that in a discussion like this is to make Israel look good. Doesn't mean you want to do that, but that's how it comes across. So just wanted to let you know how it comes across. Second, to say I cannot compare with the Nazis, which I hear it a lot from Israelis. For me, it comes across, even if it's unintentional, as if the Jewish suffering is unique and no suffering can be compared to theirs by them to us today. Just for me, it's selfish, inhumane. It doesn't matter. There's no suffering that's completely identical. So, of course, the Nazi regime was very different from today's Israel. Today, we've been suffering for 73 years. Thank God the Jewish people did not suffer for 73 years of Holocaust. So it's not worse or better, or I'm not comparing to say, oh, we're suffering more than them or suffering less than them. This stupid agenda of looking more victim or less victim, that's not my call here. But when we speak about humans, it's nice, it's human to consider human suffering comparable to other human suffering in order to bring about relief, justice, a call, a heart for relief. So this is what I hope an Israeli or any other person would do. Speaking of last point you mentioned, if I were an Israeli, it's not easy. Saying is easier. Of course, I agree with you. If I were born representing an oppressive regime, it's extremely hard. I luckily represent many oppressed groups: Armenians, Syriacs, Copts, Palestinians, Arabs in general in this region, and Christians of the East. I represent all of those ones who are oppressed groups today, historically, and continue to be in the future. The only thing that I take responsibility, that I represent as a very oppressive power, is my gender. And I take full responsibility because we men have been abusing women forever. And thus I take responsibility and I don't coat it and make it look nice. Now, if I were born an Israeli, I'm saying it with confidence. And if I chose to awaken my conscience and to work for human rights, I would do either like Noam Chomsky or anybody who is a real intellectual standing against the state, not even living in here, or even if living in here, I would simply stand against my government without apologizing for the thing or explaining the beautiful stuff on the side. Mainly, I would do it, but not mainly. So this is my concern. In regard to Yunus mentioning things about what I mentioned, biblical Judaism, how I can define, etc. Yunus, nobody has the right to define me against my will. But can somebody question my identity humbly and tell me, well, this is what Palestinianism shows in history. What do you think? Well, I studied the Bible. One of the things about Jewish identity is one of the only identities in the world that's written, coded down in a book that's divine to us today, or to some of us, as opposed to other identities. So we can literally actually study it more. That's good. It has advantages, it has disadvantages, it has advantages for the Jews, it has disadvantages against them. It brings them pressure, of course. But to say what is biblical Judaism is important, because even religiously and in many places, we Christians of the East, and I particularly mentioned this, we have faced persecution, and until today we're facing persecution by Jewish supremacy from the first century until today, by the death of our founder, Jesus Christ, and by the killing of the first Christians of the first century that Jewish people until today do not confess, admit, or apologize for, as opposed to Germany that apologized for the Holocaust. And until today, Eastern Christians in Palestine and current Israel, our crosses are being spat at, we are being mistreated, kicked out until today for being Christian at many times. And there's a religious conflict and tension, of course, and I'm not saying Judaism is worse or better, or Christianity is worse or better, but this is an identity-centered approach that I'm coming from. As a Christian from the East, I have the right to ask for the rights of the Christians of the East against any colonialist power, whether they call themselves Jewish or non-Jewish. And Western Christianity have abused us as well. For those on the comments writing against Christianity in general, of course, we had something called the Dark Ages for 1,000 years, and it abused Christians themselves. Now, I'm not here to defend faith or certain belief systems. I'm rather defending the Christians of the East that until today we face persecution, and unfortunately, we face persecution by our brothers. And I say brothers because they are my family, and I'm responsible to talk about them, not somebody telling me what my suffering from them are, which are the Muslims whom I love. Whether Palestinians, Arab Muslims in general, will still face sometimes persecution, mistreatment, and the discrimination, and the list goes on. So, that being said, yes, we can define, just one second, define or redefine or question identities. Today, humbly though, I get every day defined or redefined or pushed into saying, are you Palestinian? By Israelis. Oh, but you're Armenian. Oh, but you're Egyptian. Oh, but you're Syriac. For those who don't know what Syriac is, we are the ancestors of Abraham who still speak Aramaic until today. Aramaic is not Armenian. Armenian is something else. Just very short to clarify those things because people tend to think they're the same. So every day I get by Israelis saying who I am, or you're not Palestinian, or you're not. This is rude. But when when we speak about what Navi was mentioning, I really admire this guy's approach and just love for his own faith and willing to give up land over just his faith and people, human life over land. Amazing. This is a revolution, in my opinion. And so based on this and his request of defining and bringing identity into the light, very healthy to speak about identity, where it comes from, and to end with this, we're all at the very end. Identified, in my opinion, at least by one part. There's another part, but one major part, I call it horizontal. I'm defined by you and me and us. I am a brother because I have you as my brother or sister. I'm a mother or I'm a father because I have a son. I'm a husband if I have a wife, and so on and so forth, and vice versa. We're very deeply defined by each other, and we're humans because another human told me that I'm a human. If I lived in the desert my whole life on my own, I would never know even my own species. I would never even know who I am, what I am. I'm a doctor because I was certified, like others witnessed at a university that I'm a doctor. For example, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying. So this is the main definition of us. Then ethnicity and those things come after. Sorry, I went long, but there was a lot of things I wanted to share, and things went into different directions.
Malcolm, I just have
curiously,
just one question. Curiously, one question for you. By humbly, when somebody questions your identity humbly, by that you mean ignorantly? Because when you said they're wondering whether if you're Armenian or Egyptian, they're wondering, and then they give you the space to explain your identity to them. I understand humbly by meaning that it's some sort of ignorance on the side, or not, like a lack of information. Is that true?
No, irrelevant. Humble means I'm kind enough to allow you to define yourself. Or would you explain to me this? If there's ignorance, you call it ignorance, I call it lack of knowledge. If I don't know what you mean, what do you mean?
Yeah, I said lack of knowledge, yeah, as well. Yeah,
Yes,
either ignorance or lack of knowledge.
But many Israelis, not all, come to me. Yeah, no, you're not Palestinian. Why are you saying it? But you are Armenian. But who are you to define who I am? I just told you I'm a Palestinian. Please respect. Please,
Malcolm,
relax.
Malcolm, I just want to clarify. You said you think Jews should apologize to you for killing Jesus?
Apologize to me? What do you mean by to me?
To Christians? You think Jews owe Christians an apology for killing Jesus?
I think anybody who is being killed and he's an innocent should be apologized for, Brother Adar.
Okay,
Jesus Christ
wait, hold on.
historical
Wait,
figure.
no, Malcolm, you spoke. I need to listen.
I'm trying to answer your question. If you don't want me to answer, go ahead.
Well, no, I just want to know, you think that Jews should apologize to Christians for killing Jesus?
I think that Jews should apologize to Eastern Christians for killing them, not only Jesus. Of course, yes.
But
Christians
weren't just killed by Jews.
Which was
literally every single religion was killed and persecuted by another religion. So we all need to just go around and say sorry to each other.
Yes, why not? Yes.
Wait,
yes,
hold on.
Why
I want to kind of break this down. I want to break this down because, Malcolm, you say a lot of things I agree with, some things I disagree with, but this is just like whole nother level of just like, I would even call it a cringe take. No offense, but to think that blame should be passed down thousands of years makes zero sense whatsoever. That we somehow hold any responsibility whatsoever for something that happened 2,000 years ago. That's one. Two, if we look at the history of Jews and Christians, way more Jews have been killed by Christians than vice versa. No one here, no Jew here, we don't care. We don't need an apology from you because you're not guilty of anything. We've moved past it. Let's move past what happened. What happened to Jesus has nothing to do with me. That's not to mention it's also based on mythology. Okay? It's not, we don't know if it's historically accurate about
say mythology.
Wait, hold on, Malcolm. Because I can't.
So don't disrespect.
Wait, hold on. I can't hear because I put it on mute because I'm hearing an echo. Studio issues, I got to figure it out. So I'm going to finish and then all you. It's based on a mythology that you believe in. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's not a mythology I believe in. I don't know if Jews had anything to do with Jesus' death. I don't even know if Jesus ever existed. I respect your right to believe in him, but to somehow expect us to accept your mythology and then 2,000 years later somehow take responsibility, I mean, this just is not grounded in reality. Like, you know, Jews and Christians now have great relationship. There's no reason to tarnish it and somehow bring up like 2,000-year guilt and make it seem like we somehow wronged you. No, the majority of the death has been imposed by Christians to Jews, and we've come to forgive you. We have great relations. Let's not get stuck in the past on ideas that are based on mythology that not all of us believe in.
Sure, listen on that. So basically, first, to tell me mythology is disrespectful, whether I believe in, don't put it in those terms, please. It's unacceptable.
Theology.
Second, 1 second, Muhammad. Second, yes. Jesus Christ, Christians, do you believe we exist? We were persecuted by the Jews. The church almost vanished. When I say the word church, it meant the group of believers in Jesus Christ of the first century, except for if it was not for the Roman war in 66 AD. The first church of believers, we almost finished from existence because of Jewish persecution. Forget about Jesus, okay? Because it's personal, and Jews are connected to anti-Semitism, and they justify this by that, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to say that you're doing it consciously or you're trying, but I'm just saying this. Eastern Christians until today, to say you forgave us is not humble, because we also forgave you, brother. Yes, and we actually forgave you first because you persecuted us first. If you want me to speak with this language, it's not nice. So
you're asking for an apology, though.
Yes, but listen, you're telling me you forgave us because we killed you more. Western Christians killed me more than they killed you, by the way. But regardless of that, I'm telling you that you persecuted me first. When I use the word you is not maybe the best, or the Jewish back then synagogue or leadership persecuted the first Christian first and never apologized, as opposed to many Christians today who apologize, by the way, including even the non-Christian Germany that apologized and compensated for the Holocaust, whereas the Jewish people never did this. So taking responsibility, if you're saying, well, 2,000 years, well, pass it on me. Well, why do you refer to Israel 3,000 years ago then? No, please, could you forget also the land? And could you forget that you even existed here? If you don't want to even take responsibility morally, and you only want to take possessions that you think 3,000 years ago belonged to you, and today you're coming to kick out people, and eventually to live here. And then if you are a nice Jew, you're like, okay, let's keep the people now, not stop kicking them out and live together. Well, that's not ultimate justice, by the way. That's ultimate peace, and I love it, but it's not ultimate justice. Ultimate justice, if somebody took somebody else's house, they would give it back fully and leave. That's ultimate justice. But because we need to live together in mercy and think of future generations like Nir is thinking, of course the Jewish people here, I believe, should stay and live together. But that's not because it's justice. It's because it's a better solution. Well, justice is somebody, you took the land, and I'm repeating again, you give it back and you leave. Anyway, now back to your answers. Apology, I'm expecting apology from any human who mistreats another human. And kindly, Adar, there was never this tension between me and you. But when you touch upon things to do with faith and belief, I never said anything against, whether I'm speaking with a Jew, against Moses. Or it's a mythology. So I'm repeating this again. Please, for future talks, never speak to me like this, or Jesus like you don't know he existed. Do you believe in history books? Well, if you're denying all history, I'm speaking with a lack of authenticity here, big lack of authenticity. You're picking and choosing history. Oh, well, I don't believe the Jewish people exist then. Well, because the Bible mentions them. Well, I don't believe they exist because that's mythology. What's wrong with that? You're speaking now not anymore like with logic, and it's disrespectful. So kindly keep your language more logical. Thank you.
I can understand why you are offended by me calling it mythology, but this is my take also on the Jewish stories. Moses existing is not historically proven. It's mythology. Hindu belief is mythology. I hold this true about all religion. And I would even imagine, and maybe you find it offensive, and I accept that, and maybe I'll look for better wording for it, but if I were to talk about Krishna and the millions of Hindu gods, wouldn't you agree that that's mythology?
If I'm speaking to a Hindu, I need to respect how he thinks about it. Also, there is stuff that are not mentioned in history, and they're only based on faith. Jesus Christ is so mentioned in history. He's written by 8 historians who didn't believe in him, let alone the whole Bible and the whole writers writing about him. You're speaking about a character, more than 1/3 of humanity believe in him. not just a few 100 million or a few 100,000 of people.
But
With all due respect, it's not about number though.
That's an appeal to the masses. Just because a lot of people, I mean, I don't want to get in a theological discussion with you, but
that's why I already mentioned that. It's not about the number. I'm saying there's a lot of history books and Jewish people who are spoken about, Jewish historians who didn't like Jesus, like Josephus Flavius of the 1st century, who wrote about him and even about his death and resurrection. Now, aside from that, it's okay. You meant to say, are you expecting an apology? Back to that. I'll dismiss as if you said nothing about mythology. No offense taken. Yes, I expect an apology from any human who hurts his fellow brother human. Yes, I do expect an apology.
How have I harmed you?
But you cancel. As a human to human.
From a human to human, how have I harmed you?
For an apology from the Jews. I'm sorry, Adar, that I'm cutting in. I'm really losing my patience here. You specifically asked if you really meant, and that's a beautiful sentiment, that anyone who is wronged by anyone else should apologize, a human being to human being, and I can agree with that sentiment. But why are you singling out the Jews? Saying who started what is the chicken and the egg. It's like me saying as a Jew, well, because we were like this and people attacked us and this and this and this, then this is what happened to Palestinians. But that is not an argument that any Palestinian or many other people and many people would accept, saying, why does it matter what happened to you or who started what? It doesn't justify what's happening now. And so I really don't understand your point because I feel like you are contradicting yourself.
When you speak
you're preaching one thing and then you're saying another thing.
1 second. When you speak of Palestinians, please don't represent us. I am a Palestinian. You're telling me not one Palestinian would say, because you're disregarding the Palestinian Christian minority who exists. We are 2 million Christian Palestinians out of 12 million.
I'm not talking about religion right now. I'm talking about the fact.
I'm not really. I'm telling you, you're telling me not a Palestinian would agree with me. Who told you? Palestinian
No,
Christian.
I didn't say not a Palestinian would agree with you. That's not what I said.
Okay.
I said that you saying that Jews started it with killing Jesus and that's why they need to apologize first and this is why this and this and that happened is like me as a Jew. Wait just 1 second. Me as a Jew saying, well, because I was persecuted and because this has happened to me and I was persecuted under the Germans and under Islamic law and under this and under that, then that justifies the fact that I did something as a Jew to the Palestinians. That's what I'm saying. It sounds like to me.
Can you explain again? Maybe I'm not understanding. Could you explain again?
Yeah. I feel like what you said right now,
yes,
the whole speech about who wronged who, okay, and because the Jews started it, okay, it's kind of like a chicken and an egg conundrum. That's one. Second, it's like me saying as a Jew, well, Palestinians are suffering at my hands because I suffered under Arab regime or under Islamic regime or under the Nazi or under this. I'm taking something that happened to me and saying this is why Palestinians are suffering, and that is not a legitimate claim. And me as a Jew, I'm saying that's not a legitimate claim.
I still don't understand. Sure.
Okay. Listen, guys. Malcolm. Like, okay, we're on the subject on theology. I don't want this to be on theology. I'm Muslim. Okay, we're trust me, we're the most strict people on the planet. But here's the thing, I'm not gonna try to interpret what Malcolm said. I actually want to finish up on that question.
I want to understand, Muhammad. I want to understand what Danny is asking, please. And Mir wanted to comment, so I beg you just to understand. So what Danny is saying, I want to respect her. So not suddenly to change, take into another direction.
Please. I'll try to explain it one last time.
Please, I apologize because
you'll understand. Because maybe I'm just explaining myself not clearly. When you spoke with Adar and you talked about the fact that Jews should apologize to Christians because we killed the first believers of Jesus and we almost annihilated the church. And so what you're saying is that someone who started something is the reason why they're at fault. Okay, so that would be like me as a Jew saying that the people who persecuted me are at
Now I
fault
gotcha.
for Palestinian suffering, because had I not suffered, Palestinians would not suffer, and that's not a legitimate claim.
Sure. Now I
That's
got
how
you.
it comes off.
Sorry if it came across like this. It's irrelevant. I'm saying, listen, I'm saying, why am I mentioning that maybe Jewish people or Israel today should admit or apologize for at least the Christians of Palestine? Forget about history, for current abuses of us as Palestinian Christians. Particularity of Palestinian Christian abuse, of they call it anti-Semitism. We have anti-Christianism here as well. So what we face, that's not mentioned in the media much, the discrimination, the burning of churches by settlers in different places and destroying them, and the sitting on our crosses and discrimination against our spirituality on daily basis, and attacking the person of our founder of our faith himself, Jesus Christ, is completely discriminatory and should be apologized for. Like anything, like Israel should apologize for the settlement, discrimination, racism, all the regime that it's not like more special or more unique. I'm just saying apologizing is the beginning of admitting a fault, like Germany admitted and apologized for the Holocaust. So what anything, I'm not saying the Holocaust is the same amount of suffering. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying any wrongdoing that we do, we need, in order to change it, we need to apologize for or admit it first, and then say, okay, how can we now fix it? How can we solve it, etc., etc.
So
That's what I'm trying to say. I
gave on something that in order to bridge the gap.
Allow me, Danny, 1 second. I gave ourselves as an example as Eastern Christians because we are not mentioned usually. We are marginalized even more, and this is like not taken into consideration even. And I'm saying even we, Jews, have suffered from Western Christianity when they don't ever realize and say, well, we also persecuted Eastern Christians for a phase, even if it's way smaller and way less severe, etc., etc. You see the hypocrisy of suffering. Oh, Jewish centeredness. This was all, my point was connected to Nir's point about I can't compare Israel to the Holocaust or to the Nazis. I'm saying because it's Jewish centeredness, in my opinion. That's what's happening. It's continuous Jewish centeredness and victim mentality of the Jews, thinking they're still victims until today, taking from 2,000 years or 3,000 years of victimhood and bringing it until today, and then telling me, Adar saying, oh, but we need to forget the past and we forgave you already. Well, I wish you forgave people who kicked you out of the land and you didn't think of coming back, of Romans, etc. But it's all hypocrisy for me that I'm trying to address, not hypocrisy of Adar, not hypocrisy of Nir. I'm not attacking anybody's person here. I believe in all of you, total respect. I'm saying about the attitude that comes across. I wish I explained myself more. I know that I am triggering a lot of responses. I do have to go in a few seconds just to allow respect for those who want to answer quickly. Maybe I will not respond, but at least Nir wanted to respond. I apologize, Nir, that I took a lot to say, but please, or whoever.
All good. It was a hot topic. It was a hot topic. Look, I get that a lot. That I don't know why you said that what I'm saying comes across as trying to make Israel look good, when the first or second thing I said is that we have the responsibility. We are responsible. I think that we are, and we do cause a lot of suffering, and we do need to address it. So I don't know how it made you. How did it come across like that? But regarding the Nazi comparison, it's simple to me. The way I see it, we didn't create we didn't create a final solution for you guys. That's the main issue. We didn't try to annihilate you because you are Palestinians. That's how I see it. It's simple.
Well, to us you did, but
it doesn't mean that you don't suffer. It doesn't mean that there's no racism. Unfortunately, there is. And I know that I get that a lot, that I'm very, very naive and trying to focus on the positive side, to elevate the positive side. I get that a lot. But I truly believe that's the way to create better life here. Not for us. I don't know if it will be for us. But like I said, for the future. Yeah, basically, I think that this topic talks about Jesus. I'm also, regarding what you said, that I'm also solution agnostic. So basically, everything that will promise my daughter to live a better life than I did, that's the kind of solution that I buy. Yeah, Malcolm, I will allow you to comment because I know you have to go. So please.
No, I will not say much because others, I'm sure, want to say, but I will have to go. Forgive me on that. I'm just want to say the comparison of the Nazis now is not the big deal. I love your heart, Nia. Focusing on the positive is beautiful. I said just the timing, just the main focus that came across. Maybe you don't mean it. It just came across like the main focus that you brought here, and so it comes. I said it comes across. It doesn't mean you intend. The annihilation, however, brother, we believe Zionism wanted to annihilate us. Until today, this is the case. However, we were in different. It was different circumstances. You did not
That
have the chance.
really depends on how you define Zionism, but that's
The
another topic.
the
We don't
founders
have time
said
for
we
this.
need.
Yeah.
The founders said we need to remove all. If you want to call it final solution, we can call it another. To remove all Arabs, to take them all out. Doesn't mean kill them all. Okay.
I
Also,
don't
by the
think
way,
Herzl
Germany.
wanted to do that.
By the way, Germany's main attempt was to remove you from Germany, not to kill you necessarily only, but to hopefully to get rid of you, like Europe, like British. They wanted to support you being here and give you power. It's okay, you can get get you out of Britain, hopefully. Not, it's not. This is annihilation. It's a form of annihilation and violence. But it's an endless story. Thank you guys for listening to me. I apologize if I went longer at the end. I thank you for all. Thank you for Adar, and there is all understanding between us, but we have to set boundaries for things not to be offensive, or so we're careful in the future. Not, I didn't take anything personally. Love you, bro, Adar. And
Thank you
الاحترام
for
حبيبي.
joining, Malcolm. I appreciate it.
Allah mak.
الله
thank
معك.
you. Take care. Bye bye.
Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, okay.
Now what?
Okay. Maybe
We're closing in on 2 hours, so we could touch on. Let's maybe do audience questions. Okay, we'll do like 30 minutes of audience questions, then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
Artie,
Cool.
the man of the people.
Yeah, let's do that.
Audience, I need to figure out this echo thing. I hear myself speaking. So, audience, ask some questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Obviously, we're going to prioritize super chats. Thank you in advance for the super chats. Nir, what's that little thing you got there?
So this is Bray Wyatt. He's a WWE wrestler, former.
Cool.
I got this as a present from some guy living in the US, and I thought it's gonna be a great setting.
Also, just point out the whole Malcolm, when he was talking about like how Jews need to apologize to Jesus, like, okay, as you know, like if you come to the States, it's actually worse, to be honest with you, when it comes to that, rhetoric. Like, Jews have to apologize to Jesus. It's actually just come to the States, man.
I don't know. I grew up there. I've never heard that take before. That was the first time in my life I've ever heard that.
You serious?
The Jews need to apologize for. I actually heard it a lot as a kid growing up.
It's a very prominent talking point or an argument for the far right in America.
I've heard that the Jews killed Jesus, but not that they expect an apology. So it's interesting.
I just want to address, like, there was like three different people asked if I'm a gamer. So no, I'm not a gamer. My husband is though, so that's why.
Wait, you guys can see the super chat?
No, not this. You can look into the comments. There's private chat and then there's comments. So
do I have to go like full screen?
No,
if you're on your phone, maybe.
No, I'm on the computer. I mean, like full screen on the.
If you need to leave the full screen to read the comments.
Yeah. So yeah, my husband is a huge gamer. Gaming is I'm in a three-way with my husband in gaming, so this is why you got the gaming chair in this.
Someone said that the doll is scary.
The doll is scary.
You can use it in your debates, man. Can help.
Yeah, I was trying to scare off Malcolm.
Did it work?
I don't know. He said he needed to leave.
Scare off the enemies.
I don't know about you guys. I actually like Malcolm. He spices the conversation a little bit.
Look. I disagree with a lot of what he says, but obviously his heart is in the right place. He needs to. Even though he speaks a lot of love, it comes out as a lot of hate towards Israelis, towards Jews, and I believe it's because of things that he suffered from, and that's. I can say that it's okay, but still, I said it like I said. You need to focus more on the future. We can't expect an apology from some things that happened 2,000 years ago or even 50 years ago.
You know, it's funny. I don't mean to interrupt you. I actually want to ask him because it's like, I know what he's referring to. I mean, it is true. You can look up in like Roman history. There was actually a Roman Jewish king that I think he was trying to refer to under that before Constantine. He ruled Rome, and yeah, I mean, like, Christians were persecuted, and I wanted to ask him, like, does he mean like a Syrian Christian, or does he just mean Christians in general? Because
we'll get Malcolm back on. Maybe I'll do a one-on-one with him where we could talk all about Jesus and the Jews. I have a lot of thoughts on it.
Jesus
so maybe we can do that.
The Jews. Go Jesus and the Jews. I'm what you would consider to be.
Let's move on to a different topic because he's not here to defend himself anymore. But he's always happy to come back on. So we'll have him back on and we'll get to the bottom of this.
But don't do it. Did Jews kill Jesus debate? Please.
I kind of want to.
Please don't. Come on.
So, some percent of what we do is for entertainment value. Not all of it needs to be productive and about reconciliation. So this obviously is going to be for entertainment value. And if he's down, we'll do a one-on-one. We'll have a
nice is more entertaining.
Who owes who an apology
what is this
at all.
verse you got in the super chat, Adar? I'm trying to...
Yeah, see.
Guys, I'm dying to know the super chat. I can't pull it up, for some reason.
Are you out of full screen mode?
So thank you so much to Orhan Meyer. We got a Bible quote. Marcus 10, 33, 34. Jesus shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and the Gentiles shall kill him.
Yeah. My boy is dropping some.
Gentiles? I'm trying to understand this.
I mean, it's an interesting point. It's almost like Jesus being killed was part of like prophecy and essential for Christianity to exist. So
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Controversial, but I'll say it. Maybe we deserve a thank you.
I mean,
and I say that in snark, right? Like if people are genuinely offended, then let's talk about it. But the whole concept of generational guilt is something that actually is very big in like the woke social justice movements today. But it's interesting. Eunice, you mentioned this is like a white supremacist ideal. So I guess white supremacists also believe in generational guilt. To me, it's just a ridiculous concept. Everyone's born innocent. Your actions define who you are, not the actions of your ancestors. And just by virtue of us being alive means we are the offspring. We come from very violent people. Our peaceful ancestors could not compete with the murderers, rapists, and pillagers. We are the offspring of pretty brutal people. We now need to take those traits that our ancestors selected for and find a way to build a beautiful, peaceful world. But I mean, we come from a very ugly world, and it makes no sense to try to put blame on people for the actions of their ancestors.
Isn't that everybody though?
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, we are all the ancestors of brutally violent We are all the offspring
What?
of brutally violent people. The peaceful ones were not competitive. They couldn't compete in the evolutionary playing field. We selected for violence and cooperation, but violence was very much a part of it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, Adar, regarding this issue. And I think you just said the answer, but I can. Do you think that a grandson of a Nazi soldier, which worked in the death camps, for example, is he responsible for what his grandfather did?
No, not at all.
I totally agree, and I don't.
When you say irresponsible, it means he's. Do you think
No, he
he's
said
not
responsible.
responsible, or he is responsible?
I think he is not responsible.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he is not responsible, and I don't expect him to apologize for the sins of his grandfather. Because like you said, I mean, the entire human race did crazy things all the time, and we have to focus on how to make future generations not do those crazy things.
Yeah, when I
You have another-
traveled to Germany a couple of years ago, probably 6-7 years ago, I was met with a lot of apologies from Germans who found out I was Jewish. They're like, "Oh, you're Jewish. Oh, you don't look Jewish. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing." And I'm like, "What are you apologizing for?" And I'd break the ice with really dark humor that I thought Germans had a hard time understanding my humor, and I was just like, we might as well laugh about it, but I can't blame you for what our
I
grandparents
could see
went through.
some instances in where like a collective apology could have value in terms of reconciliation. So I think it could be good if Israelis and Palestinians can get to the point where they can apologize not for their individual actions, but for their collective actions. So I do see value in it. But
the
the whole
difference is
concept
that
any of us
Palestinians,
carry guilt
up until
because of our
today, they
ancestors,
don't
I mean,
have-
it just doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to view the world that way. And
Yeah,
it's crazy how many people actually do, like hold some kind of belief of generational guilt. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Right, but the difference between generational guilt and the responsibilities that Israelis have to acknowledge Palestinian suffering is that Palestinian suffering is still happening. Unlike the Holocaust, which is not still happening. So not only has it, put to an end, we had a state was created as a result. And so we have the privilege to not look for any apologies. I think that's the difference.
So, we have a super chat from Synagogue of Steak. Thank you for the $2. I'm not going to read that comment just because it's, you're trying to offend people. So,
bro.
But thank you for the $2. If anyone's interested, you could see it in the chat, but I'm not going to read it.
Well, I'm a newbie to this, so I can't see jack shit.
That's so like, are you out of full screen mode?
I'm at full screen mode. Like, it's like, holy shit.
Out of full
No,
screen
you need
mode.
to get out of full screen mode.
Oh, I originally wasn't on full screen mode, and I still can't see. I see, I see the private chat and everything like that, but I still can't see shit. This is like,
Just say you're technically challenged, bro. It's okay.
Yeah, Habibi.
I do want to say, if we have like any Christian viewers and I said something snarky or offensive, that's not my intention. But in pushing back on a point that I view, I mean, extremely ridiculous. It was hard to not express how ridiculous I felt it was without expressing some kind of negative sentiment I feel towards not Christianity, but all organized religions. So just know that I have absolutely nothing against Christianity as a religion. I have certain criticism about religions in general, and I hold this true with religions across the board, just so you all know.
Did anyone wanted to discuss some kind of a topic that we didn't touch on?
I actually, I had like 5, but I mean, I could just.
We have more super chats. and we're getting questions, so we could address them. And
Sure.
Mohamed, you could also bring up some stuff.
Actually, I actually wanted to. I did want to finish the whole Eurocentric identity when it comes to
Wait,
Israeli.
Mohamed, let me just do these super chats real quick because they do
Right.
disappear after a while.
Okay.
So first of all, Orhan again with another 50 knock, which is Norwegian crown for anyone who's interested. Does anyone see the woman in a burqa behind Dina? I believe Danny he meant.
And Dan, yeah, but I don't see a woman with a burqa. Maybe he's looking at the pictures in the background with me and my sister, but I'm not wearing a burqa.
It's like when you see constellations or cloud shapes, but I don't see it, no.
This guy must be high as shit to see that. Like,
Yeah, let me get some of that stuff, Orhan.
I see a printer.
Yeah, there's a printer. No, but there's
Yeah.
pictures of my sister and I, like there.
No.
So I
That's
thought
not a
maybe
burqa.
but it's not a burqa.
Is he mistaking the air freshener as a burqa in the background?
Can you bring the pictures a little bit closer so we can see exactly what?
There's a burqa in there.
I mean, it's just my sister and I. She did a birthday
No
present for
burqa,
me.
dude. No
But
burqa.
no burqa. I'm
Hell no. I interpret what he said. I actually believe he saw like an actual burqa woman just pass by you like paranormal shit, you know?
oh.
It was his way to say we should address Afghanistan.
At least
Afghanistan.
my chair.
I mean, like
Oh,
you guys got
did he
some.
mean
You guys got some competition, you know. I'd like to be online and talk about, you know, like I shit post a lot of time, right? So I'll have like conversations with Israelis, and they'll be like, "Oh, we had the 6-day wars." I'm like, "Yeah, well, the Taliban just took over Afghanistan in 9 days, so you guys got like some competition going on." Yeah, I have dark humor too, so you.
We like dark humor on this channel.
You know, I'm
Love and Mercy, who I imagine is Christian, says, Adar, you're okay. So thank you for thank you. I guess
see,
I wasn't too offensive.
you're just okay. Nothing special, but just okay.
I don't strive to be anything other than okay.
Are there serious questions? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
Alaram, thank you so much for the 6 shekels. What do you think about the future? This is a great topic.
The most generic question to ever been asked. What do I
Can I answer?
Yeah, man, go ahead.
So, if we continue on the current path, I see a dark future. I am sorry, but I need to say it. We are going towards a one-state solution that the Israelis don't want, and it will be imposed on them by the international community. And then we will go for a civil war and a lot of killings.
Totally agree with that.
I think that if I could take it out of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I think in general the globe, due to globalization, we're kind of going through this melting pot crisis. What was defined as one group has changed drastically throughout the years because of the mass influx of migration throughout the world. So when you ask what the future holds in store, I really don't know. I just think that the world is going through an identity crisis, and particular to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's no different. Just like Palestinians and Jews and Israelis, it's become a meta-ethnicity, and what entails being Israeli, what entails being Jewish, what entails being Palestinian. I would like the future to hold peace between two people. I would like to believe that at one point we'd see each other as human beings before we are defined by anything else. I also see that there's conversations between this generation from all around the globe that talk about putting ourselves as human beings first, prior than anything else that we identify as. But it could be my completely disconnected from reality, but that would be my hope for the future.
Younes, تفضل.
I don't have any. I mean, I'm just talking. Okay. For the one state thing, my comment is that I don't think it's going to happen. Even if things are possibly as bad as it can get, it just won't happen in the way that I see things are built up in this entire country. Neither the any Israeli government would let it or allow it to happen, or the Palestinian organizations either. I think the worst nightmare, the worst thing that can happen, and I have said this before, is a two-state solution in the shape of Gaza, complete separation, in a way that the conditions in the West Bank could get worse, with complete separation from Israel, from the remaining or the rest of the country, and then we would have a new generation that is that has never met anyone from the other side, that has no connection to the ancestral land, that has a very similar situation to Gaza, and I think that would be the worst nightmare, and that's probably if the situation keeps, if we stay where we are, that's unfortunately what's going to happen, despite all of any efforts from Israelis to undermine the Palestinian Authority. I think eventually, if things get really bad, the far right would dig its own grave in a way that the settlers don't want a solution, and the people who support them do not want a solution, and the end game is going to be exactly like Gaza. At some point, Israel probably wouldn't be able to sustain the situation in the West Bank and would probably have to leave at some point, but it would not be to the benefit of anyone. It would be really bad. I apologize for kind of like bringing the mood down, but it was just in the context of what do you think would happen, and that's the biggest fear, and it should be the biggest fear of anyone. There has to be an agreement. There has to be a return to what we have been doing prior to 2013, when the negotiations had stopped, and there has to be a return to that. And I think the best outcome that we can come up with in the next 10 years would be a revival of something that is similar to the Oslo Agreement, not the Oslo Agreement itself. I think that's gone, but something that is similar, in a way that two states who live side by side are kind of like work together, but it wouldn't be a final resolve. It would like there would still be conflict. I don't see that ending anytime soon, in like within the next 20 years. I think the best outcome that we can get out of this situation that we are in, realistically, is going to be some sort of a federation or a confederation. And the terminology could be different. They could be using a different terminology. If we can reach an agreement, that's the best that we can get. Nothing to resolve the main issues that have been around for decades: the settlements, Jerusalem, refugees, security of the Israeli state. Just to count the main points, I don't think any of these would be resolved in the next 10 years. But we can only kind of like try to sustain ourselves, try to sustain the Palestinian presence, the Palestinian society, and try to sustain Israel's security at the same time. That's from my That's the way that it sounds like to me.
Good. So all are negative reviews. Let's talk a little bit positive, like I said.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Nir,
I see that the current air is very. There's hope. There's hope than has ever been in the last 10 years. Talks
I
are
agree.
taking place. Yeah, we have never seen any of this happening, and it's not only on the regional level. It's not only the other Arab countries. Things are also happening here, but at the same time, there are forces that are on the other side, forces that are playing against the wind of change. Let's call it, as in reference to U2's song from the 90s, "The Winds of Change."
Not
Yeah.
you two. It's Scorpions.
Yeah, the Scorpions. Sorry. Yes.
I was thinking of like Lost in the, like Gone in the Wind by Kansas or something.
Mhm.
Oh, we are
Dust in
Yeah.
the wind.
in the wind. Yeah.
Dust in the wind. Yeah.
I want to get to a few more quick questions before we wrap up. So, first of all, Love and Mercy is asking if we'd ever have a debate with a Christian from the other side, someone like Israeli Armenian Aramaic activist Shadi Khalil. Yeah, we could do that. I'm not familiar with who that is, but we could have them on to debate Malakon.
I gotta just comment on the previous question and say that basically, if we continue to do the current situation, I agree that the future looks pretty much like Navi said or what Yunus said, pretty much the same. I'm not sure between the two of them. But if we focus now on creating the next generation of peacemakers, that could lead to a whole lot of that could do a whole lot of good things and to create a better environment at the end.
Well, how do you say Nir? Right? Is your name Nir? Okay, sorry,
Yeah,
Nir.
that's my name.
I'm so sorry. This is once again my first time. It's once again like, how do you define peace? Because once again, I have these conversations with people, and I'm like, I tried to convince them that, like, for example, you take a look at Egypt and you take a look at Jordan. I told them, like, listen, I don't want to be cruel, but you guys realize that Egypt only signed a peace agreement so they can get the Sinai Peninsula back. Listen,
That's called cold peace.
yeah, that's just on a piece of paper. And the same thing with Jordan when they were trying to get their land back on Greater Israel. And like, even today, like this, I'm sorry, but it's like this shit always gets annoying with me because it's like with the UAE and Bahrain deal, like people are like, yes, there's peace now, but I'm like, guys, the UAE and Bahrain never had an issue in that region. They never had an issue in the Levant, Palestine, Israel, what you want to call it. I don't even see why they're being brought in the conversation. It's like, no, we can like go over there and take photos. And it's like, well, I had Jewish friends that went over to the UAE way before all of this, man. It's like, I know Jews who went to Saudi Arabia, but that doesn't mean that the average Saudi is like, yep, I love Israel. Like,
So
Like I
if we
said,
talk about international politics, I can get really into the difference between cold peace and what lies behind the peace with the Arab states in the Persian Gulf. But that is a whole other topic and a whole topic that I could talk just 2 hours on. So when you ask to define peace, there are different forms of peace that go through the scale of cold and warm. Because we are two ethnic groups, Israelis and Jews and Palestinians alike, who are fighting over the same land, whether it be two states or one state solution or confederation or federation, or whatever other kind of solution you'd want to think, we need warm peace. In order to achieve warm peace, I think Nir is on the right path of education.
well, and also just like once again, I've always feel the need to preference this. It's like when we're talking about like I like where some people refer to the occupation or the conflict, but like just look at the name until it says the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A lot of the times, I'm not accusing of any of you guys doing this on the Israeli side, like on the people on the panel, but I do see a lot of people who are very deceptive, even like evangelical Zionist Christians, for example. They always try to frame it as Jews and Arab, where it's literally in the title. It's just Israeli and Palestinian. There's no additional Arabs. There are no a Jew in Italy wouldn't have a problem with a Palestinian than more so if a Jew was living in the settlements, or even in the extreme cases, Tel Aviv, which is like the most laxadaty city in Israel. So like when I seem to phrase it as like I'll see a photo, and maybe you guys see the same thing on Instagram or something, where there's an Iraqi Muslim and there's a Jew holding hands. I'm like, guys, that's great, but tell that to the PLO, tell that to Natal. They're not going to change their policies because of that, because it's just persuasion from the real issue at large. It's just with the Israeli government and just like how the Palestinian people are treated. That is it. That's all it is. It has nothing.
That's a conflict in itself, and you're right.
Hey, guys,
There's also
I really want to start wrapping up. So there's a few more things I do want to touch on. So we gotta shorten our conversations here. Noah Solomon asked if any of us have read "Catch the Jew" by Tuvia Tenenbaum. I haven't, but I'll check it out. Nope. Has anybody read it?
No, I want to check it out too. Catch the Jew
by Tuvia Tenenbaum. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
It's like the Jewish board game. Sorry.
Yossi is saying Sulha debate destiny. Now, are you saying we should debate destiny, like the concept destiny, or the Twitch streamer destiny?
No, the streamer destiny.
You're talking about the topic of destiny. I need to understand what exactly that means. You're talking about the Twitch streamer destiny. It's interesting because I don't really know many Twitch streamers. Destiny is one of the only ones I know, and I actually respect him. He's one of the smarter dudes around, and he's an excellent debater. I'd love to have him on the channel. We could have a lot of interesting conversations. I'm not quite sure what we would debate about. If it was like a topic of economics, I'm nowhere near his level of understanding. Like he'd school me on everything economics related. And Israel-Palestine, I'd probably school him, right? So like, I'm not sure what we would debate. And maybe you're not even talking about Destiny the streamer, but I do like the guy. He's the only Twitch streamer who I listen to some of his content. And if we could get him on the show, for sure, I'd be happy to.
Oh, yeah.
Next topic is Zafar Hussein asks about what do you think of Nike pulling out of Israel next year? So I actually want to talk about this because I've been seeing this a lot, and it's unfortunate. Many Palestinians are sharing this as if it's like a win of BDS, and this seems to be just like fake news going around. And it's important, if we want people to take us seriously as activists, to try to like remain truthful and accurate. Many articles just put the headline, Nike pulls out of Israel, and many people just saw that as a BDS win. But it seems like it has absolutely nothing to do with BDS. It's a business decision. They weren't making enough money doing like individual stores in Israel, and they're pulling out of Israel and other countries next year. Furthermore, I don't think like Nike literally uses like child laborers to make their shoes. They don't care about human rights. The only reason why Nike would boycott Israel is if they felt like it could help their bottom line, if it ultimately would help them make more money. Ben & Jerry's is like a company that it's known that they're a humanitarian company. They care about like human rights issues. So that kind of makes sense why they would make that decision. But Nike is not that company at all. The only reason they would ever boycott Israel is if they thought they had money to gain from boycotting Israel. So, for example, if people were to say, if Nike doesn't pull out of Israel, we're going to boycott Nike, and enough people were to do that, then Nike might decide to boycott Israel, right? You decide to boycott companies that don't boycott Israel, maybe they'll do it. But these large corporations do not care about human rights. They don't give a shit. It's about the bottom line. It's about the money. It's about returns for the shareholders. So for people who view BDS as an effective strategy, I think I think if you want to convince large corporations, you need to find a way how to make it cost them, because they're not going to do it for altruistic reasons. Does anybody else want to chime in on this?
Well, ladies first, Danny. Dana,
I'm good. I've spoken
Okay.
enough.
I just don't want to be rude and just be like make it all about me. So because like I said, it's my first stream, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's like not just referring to the Nike, even going back to Ben and Jerry, which was a topic I really would have liked to discuss about, but it's outdated as of now. But it's I mean, I did see, to be honest, I did see one of the Israeli politicians. I don't. It was he the. He's not the president. It's not the old guy. It was someone else who was, I think, in Knesset, where they branded Ben and Jerry's a new form of terrorism.
Yeah, that's so cringe. Oh man.
Ice cream, the new form of terrorism. To kill. I mean, I don't know. Okay, I mean, like calling ice cream terrorism. I'm not sure how that's gonna work for your PR. Or, if I was going up to this guy, but like what you were saying, Adar, you're totally right about these companies. For 95% of the time, they don't give a shit about the ethical, moral side of how people in other countries are being treated. And it's like it's a PR stunt to just basically appeal to a popularity. I get that, but honestly, like I have to play devil's advocate. It kind of has its own merits, and I like it. I like some of the merits. I like I've just seeing like BB coming out and being like, "Oh, now we know what Jewish people are not going to be ordering from their favorite ice cream company." It's like, come on, dude, you can't be serious, man. Like, you can't speak for you can't speak for all of your people, and second of all, it's just ice cream. Like, holy shit. Yeah, but that's my take.
Yeah.
I think Ben and Sherry has definitely benefited from all of the memes and all of the comedy and all of the all of the activism around all of the action. I mean, around the announcement, and I think it was just an announcement. It wasn't a decision. It was just. I don't think it meant much, but it was a PR stunt, like Mohammed said. Much, I think, from a marketing perspective, businessmen and companies would do that stuff if they are 100% sure that their audience or their consumers would play along. They would not take any decisions that are against their own interests. And that said, of course, if the movement is strong enough, if it's expansive to a point where it can the consumers in Europe, for example, if there's that wide base of consumer base that would impact a company's or manufacturers' output in the market, then it's going to eventually happen organically, and that would be worrying. That should be worrying. And I wouldn't say that it doesn't do anything, but it's not for good or bad. But the problem is things are happening around us, and things are changing. And for the first time ever, the Palestinian cause or the Palestinian narrative is being adopted by an increasing number of figures. I've never seen as many celebrities in the US coming out against Israel as what had happened back in May. And it wasn't all out of humanitarian purposes, as Adar said. It was rather just riding the wave, because their friend, the celebrity friend, did that, and their cousin thought that, and they tweeted that, and this, and then they didn't want to be out of the loop. They wanted to conform, and that should be worrying to whoever says nothing is happening. It is could be problematic.
Well, you see, Yunus, that is what the fake news Al Jazeera would like you to believe.
I just wanted to chime in. Sorry, I
Danny,
really
real
have to
quick,
go.
because I know you want to say bye, but I understood the burqa comment.
That my
saying
chair
that
looks like a burqa.
your chair
Yeah.
looks like a burqa, and now I can't unsee it.
Now you can't unsee it.
You're like being hugged by a woman in a burqa. Exactly. Oh, so cute.
Oh, I get it now. I see.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the audience for listening, and I hope to do a round 2 or a one-on-one, and just have a great night.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you so much, Danny.
It was great
Yeah,
having you,
Guys,
Danny, nice to meet
as
you.
always.
I need to go too. It was nice talking to you. Goodbye.
Navi, thank you so much. Would love
Bye,
to have you
Navi.
back.
Thank
Me
you so
too.
much, Navi.
Thanks, Adar. Thanks, Nir. Thanks, Mohannad. Been a pleasure.
You
Navi
go,
as well.
Sneers.
Afwan.
Bye.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, well, it's just the 3 of us.
Yeah, we might as well wrap it up. Any final thoughts? So I'm gonna put myself on mute so I could think while sharing this thought. For those who don't know, I have an echo when I don't mute myself.
Yeah, I mean, we
So
can't hear it.
Kastamir actually makes an interesting point about when you condemn child labor, you condemn children to death in developing countries. That essentially many countries are dependent on child labor, like the children there are dependent on their work to survive. So I would say that is, I haven't thought of that, but that sounds like a legit point.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, the point of bringing that up is that Nike does not care about human rights. You know, it's not like their goal is to try to improve the lives of children. They're looking for the cheapest possible labor they can get. So that's really my point. But I think it's a legit point. Something that most people in the Western world probably aren't aware of. It's not something I'm super informed about.
Yeah. No, I believe you on that one. Child labor going on.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a brand, you know. It's a brand. The brand wants, like you said, they want
Profit.
Yeah, they want profit. They want good PR. They want engagement. They want likes. They want shares. They want to be on the news. They want to be recognized. That's a PR stunt.
Can I ask something that, like, I don't know if I don't know how much time we have left, but it's a quick question. It's like out of curiosity. Is there, like, because in America, there's like, America's unique because we have like a middle class, right? Is there, and like my father always told me, like in countries, especially even sometimes in the Middle East, it's usually rich or poor. And my question to you guys is, like, is it true? Is that the case true where your guys like in Israel or in the Palestine, or like how is there a middle class?
In Israel, most Israelis are middle class Israelis by far. Yeah. I don't know about the Palestinian territories. I would guess that, like, in Gaza there is more dichotomy. You know, lots of poor people, and very few rich people.
Yeah, well, I feel, yeah, but in that case, when it comes to Gaza, it's just because it's so dense.
But in the Palestinian territories, I don't really know. I mean, in the West Bank, I don't really know. I believe that there are more poor people than in the Israeli society. I don't know about middle class, though. I don't know.
I mean,
what I will say about Israel, we do have a pretty strong middle class, but the wages compared to the cost of living, at least in Tel Aviv, is one of the hardest to make it in the world. So
yeah,
I'm estimating now, but I would say cost of living is probably 80% of what it is in New York City, but the wages are probably less than half. So you could imagine if New York City is expensive, living in Tel Aviv is even more difficult. I've lived in Tel Aviv most of the time I've been in Israel, so I can't speak for the peripheries, but yeah, that's something.
Yeah, but the
something to
periphery,
note.
when we
Quick
talk about
question,
resource,
or you say greater value to the stockholders, not profit. So what is an example of value to stockholders that isn't profit? Like a yearly trip to Disneyland?
I mean, well, I think it's just status. Wouldn't you agree it would be like status for most of the part when it comes to what they would value?
What is this in reference to the stockholder question or the
Yeah,
middle
and
class?
it's a stockholder question is what I'm saying, because like I would
Yeah, I'm
say
not quite sure. I'm genuinely interested.
Okay. Oh, okay.
but Mohanad, you should ask Eunice that same question.
Eunice.
Yeah, because
I'm not.
you know.
Yeah, I know. It's just that I funny enough, I always like to call myself. I joke around with my family. I'm like the most whitewashed Otto you have ever meet in your life. You know, like go ahead, ask me anything. I freaking. I had a teacher of mine who is Jewish.
Where do you live in the States?
Am I allowed to say? Because it's like I'm not sure if it's doc dropping myself. Like I could say the state, or can I just say the regional part of the state? Because, like I said before, it's my first time in my life stream. But I would say that I live in the Midwest. Let's just say it like that. If any of you are familiar with America, like and like
Sure.
Yeah, cornfield country.
cornfield country. Oh, it's freaking okay. Let me just speak. Okay, in the Midwest, definitely in particular in Michigan, for example, right? I'm not. I didn't confirm anything. Okay, but I would say that my family just came back from a vacation in California, and my dad noticed. And my dad's a very knowledgeable person. He noticed that there are a lot of poor people from Michigan and from the Midwest that live in California. And that's only because of the fact that the politicians here in the Midwest actually send the poor people to California because of the weather. Because when it snows and they have absolutely nowhere to go, they will literally take the poor people and send them down to more of the southern countries. They will be like, yeah, here's your money, here's your welfare check. By the way, would you like to take a vacation? And they'll just like send them straight down to California. Kind of very sad if you think about it, because there was like lines that my dad was talking about. I was like, really? And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of poor people from where we're from. Yeah.
I want to because Or gives a clarification on the profit. The idea is that you should not concentrate in short-term profit, but long-term value. But also, long-term value means profit over a longer amount of time. So instead of making some amount of money in 1 year, if you can make less in 1 year, but have it be more in a 10-year span, then that's a better. That's ultimately better for the shareholders. But it's still, we're measuring it in terms of like profit at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, but like also take into accountability how well the sales are as well. So it's just like it's one of those things that you cannot explain in one sentence. You need like a ceremony for on that one.
Yeah. So let's do final thoughts. Nir, Mahan, it's been great having you guys on. Final thoughts before we wrap it up.
Nir, would you like to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, Adar, I just want to say thank you for letting me on your stream. I have no idea how well I'm gonna do. I mean, I have to go back and check. This is my first time, and hopefully, I gave more of a insight on my position, because I've known that a lot of Palestinians you bring on the show don't have proper English. So the communication is not there all the time. So I figured that by far I'm the best. I'm the one with the best English. I figured maybe I can convey what the Palestinian side really is. Hopefully, maybe even next time if you guys decide to have me back on. But yeah, and it was kind of a pleasure to be on here, and I'm really glad I did. Thank you.
Mohanad, it was great having you. I thought you did a great job. You articulated many points very well, and I'd be happy to have you back on again. So we'll be in touch about that.
Just give me that call.
I would ask anyone that's listening, whether he's Israeli or Palestinian, to go to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Try to find someone that lives either in Israel or Palestine. If you're an Israeli, try to find a Palestinian. If you're Palestinian, try to find an Israeli, and start making your own connections. Stop filtering the knowledge that you have about the conflict. Try to make it. Try to minimize the filters, and try to build your own connection. Because the more we connect, the more we create a better future.
Amen, brother. Nir, it was also great having you on. You've come on for some call-ins, but this is your first time for a full session,
Sure.
and I thought you did great. So we'll be having you back for sure. To all those viewing, thank you so much for joining us. We have some interesting content coming out. One potentially very big debate that I'm waiting for one final confirmation before we could announce it. We will be having Yosef Adar on the show on the 21st. He is very pro-Israel, Israeli Arab. He's going to actually come to these studios, so he's going to be sitting right next to me for a chat. So that's going to be great. And if you're new here, like and subscribe. We're doing this every week, at least one stream a week, sometimes two. And if you really love and you feel you can, support us on Patreon. All support is greatly appreciated. And or coming in last minute with a $5 super chat, very much appreciated. Or says, good job, all. And with that, signing out. Much love from Tel Aviv.
Mazel tov.